Good morning, everyone. My name is Dawn Gray. I am the business analyst and trainer for the MAT development team, and today we're going to take a look at the changes in the MAT for the version 5.7. Our agenda for this morning is going to be a description of the behind-the-scenes updates. We're then going to get into the tool and give you a live demonstration of the user interface changes that we've made. We will then take a look at the release schedule for next Tuesday, and then we're going to open it up for a question and answer session. After that, I'm going to pass it off to the Bonnie team so they can give you an update on what's upcoming in their release, and then we will wrap up the session for today. The changes that we've made to the MAT version 5.7 that are not so visible to most of our users are we have made some updates to our dependencies and mapping framework, and we updated those to newer versions so that we have better functionality within the tool. We've updated the CQL to ELM translator to version 1.3.14. We've made some security updates. We've made changes to some of the labeling and the items that are present for those users who are using a screen reader so that it's more descriptive for them. And we've cleaned up some of our older code to increase the performance and the efficiency again. So now let's go into the tool and we will take a look at the user interface changes. The first thing that you're going to notice in the MAT version 5.7 is the main header up at the top here has been completely redesigned. We've done this to save real estate and also to give you more functionality right at your fingertips. So you can now sign into UMLS here in the header. You can also sign into Bonnie. Once you are logged into Bonnie, you will see that that link at the top changes from a sign into Bonnie link to a disconnect from Bonnie link. In the previous version of the MAT, in order to disconnect from Bonnie, you had to go into the export screen, go to the upload to Bonnie, and then disconnect from here. Now you can do it from anywhere within the tool right here in the header. Additionally, we've added a profile icon. That profile icon will show you who you are currently signed in as. It has an area to go to your MAT account and a link to sign out of the system. For the MAT account section, if you click on that, it will take you to the same tabs you were used to in the previous versions of the tool for your MAT account. So you can have all of your personal information, an area to update your security questions, and an area to change your password. The other thing we've done in the header is we've changed the title, Measure Authoring Tool, to a link. That link will take you back to the Measure Library page from wherever you are in the tool. The next change we've made are on the Measure Library page, also the CQL Library page. We have expanded the recent activity table, and we've done this to allow more functionality on the measures that you've most currently been working on. For example, in previous versions, if you've been working on a measure for a few weeks and then you decide you want to version that measure, you used to have to go search for that measure down in the bottom table in order to get to the version icon. We've now moved that functionality, along with the share functionality and the cloning functionality, up into the recent activity table. So if you've been working on this measure and you're ready to create a version, the next time you sign into the MAT, it's going to be right here in your recent activity table with that icon available. With this expansion, we had to move the search. The search used to be over here on the right. So we've now put the search below the recent activity table because the search is actually for this table down here. By doing this, we've also created room to add an advanced search. The advanced search is a feature that's been requested by our users for a little while now, and we've put it into the MAT version 5.7. So you can now search for measures based on the measure state, whether it's draft or versioned, based on the patient-based indicator, the measure scoring, when the measure was last modified, who last modified the measure, and who owns the measure. Again, all of our searches are automatically filtered by your measures, so those are the measures that you own or that are shared with you. If you want to see other measures within the tool, you just need to uncheck the checkbox. So I'm going to look for my measures that are in a draft state and that are ratio, and search. You can see I only have one. Additionally, we have added a search criteria section. This section gives you information about the search that you performed. So you can see that I've returned one result from my search, and then it shows me what things I used to perform that search. So I know what this table is filtered by. If I want to change what I've searched, you can just click the advanced search again, and you can see that all of my choices are retained. So if instead of ratio, I want to go to proportion, I can do that and search, and my search changes. I'm going to do one more change, and we're going to take a look at version measures, because I want to point out something about the measure families. When you do a search for only draft measures or only versioned measures, you may see these icons. This means that it's part of a measure family. Measure family contains all of the previous versions, plus any applicable drafts of that measure. You can see in this first measure here, I've got 4 versions, and I do not have the option to make a draft of any of those versions. What that means is that this measure already has a draft within the mat. You can only have one draft of a measure going at a time. So if I've already got a draft out there, I'm not going to be able to make a draft out of any of these. I'm just not seeing it at the moment because I chose to only look at the measures that are in a versioned state. So if you want to get rid of all of your search criteria and reset everything back to the default, we have a reset link in the search criteria section, and that will remove everything, recheck your filter by my measures if you had it unchecked, and you can see in the advanced search all of the options have defaulted back to their default state. And then if I were to run my search, I get a search of all of my measures. Once you find the measure that you want and you click on it, we get to the next big upgrade in the map version 5.7, and that is our measure details page. This page has undergone a complete makeover. We did this for a couple of reasons. One reason was to make it match more closely with the rest of the tool. This never had the update when we switched from QDM logic to CQL logic because this page doesn't deal with the logic, and therefore it didn't need to be changed at the time. We've given it a left-hand navigation, and we've updated the CSS styling. The more important reason we did the change was we had some user requests about this page. The first one was that there was too much scrolling. This used to be a very long page that you had to scroll to. The other one was that a lot of the text areas were too small. You only had the ability, let's go to the copyright section, to see 1 or 2 lines of text, and then you had to start scrolling to read them. So for this version, you now have nice big text areas. You can write whole paragraphs and see it all at the same time. A lot of the fields within the measure details page are simply these text fields. You explain your risk adjustment. You explain your rate aggregation. So those are pretty simple. You type in some text and you click save. Let's take a closer look at the screens that are not just text areas. The first one is the general measure information page. And this has everything from your measure name down to your measurement period. So we've got measure name, abbreviated title, measure scoring, patient-based measure, and we have moved the editing of these 4 items to this page. So now you can edit the measure name or your measure scoring type from within the measure itself. In previous versions of the mat, you had to go back to the measure library tab, click on the edit icon to get to a separate screen in order to make those changes. You now don't have to leave the measure you're in order to make those updates. The finalized date fills in by the mat when your measure is versioned. This is a draft measure, so there's no finalized date. You have the GUID, which is the ID for this measure, and your version number. These items are uneditable. You have your ECQM identifier and the button to generate that identifier. That's still here. You can choose whether or not your measure is endorsed by NQF and designate your measurement period, all on this page. The next page that's not just a text area is the Measure Steward and Measure Developer. These are the areas where you choose organizations within the MAT to stand for the Measure Steward or the Measure Developer. As you can only have one Measure Steward, that is a drop-down list. So I'm just going to pick one at random here and choose that. For Measure Developers, you can have one or more. So we've given you a table with all of the organizations within the MAT, and this is a test environment, so please ignore the content at this point. But you can check one or more of these to add to your Measure Developers. I want to take a moment here and talk about these check marks along the left-hand side. They are here to indicate which of these subtabs you have completed, partially completed, or not completed at all. We've done that to give you sort of a quick visual. You used to have all of this information in one big page, so we wanted to give you a visual, a way to see whether you have put information in these sections. So for example, right now I've got a Measure Steward selected, but not a Measure Developer. If I were to save that, I'm going to get an open orange circle with an orange check mark. This tells me that this section has some of the information completed, but not all. Now, if I were to choose a Measure Developer, and you can see it changes to the solid green circle with the white check mark that indicates that this tab has been completed. The next screen that is not just a text area is the measure type. Again, you can have more than one measure type, so we've given you the table with the checkboxes where you can select one or more. The next screen is the references screen. The references screen looks like a simple text editor screen. So you just have your text area and your save button. However, most measures have more than one reference. So if we type in our first reference and save, you can now see there's a table up above the text area that contains the reference I just typed. And the text area has cleared out, ready for my next reference. So now if I want to edit one of these that I've added previously, I can just click on the pencil icon. It will put the text back into the text area, and I can make my change and save. If I want to remove one of these from the list, we have a delete icon available. You're then asked to delete, and it removes the reference from the list. If you have at least one reference saved in this section, the references section will show as complete. And the last section I want to talk about on the measure details page is the populations section. This plus in front of populations indicates that this tab can be expanded. So if we expand it, you will see all of the populations that are available for this measure based on the measure scoring type that I chose. So in this case, this is a ratio measure. So I have initial population, denominator, denominator exclusions, numerator, and numerator exclusions. When I click on the population itself, I get my text area so I can explain my population. And save. And let's take a look at the check marks. So I have one out of the possible populations completed, and that's indicated with the green check mark. But the populations tab is showing the orange check mark, which indicates that some, but not all, of the possible populations are completed. And that may be okay. Not all measures are going to use all possible populations. You may only have an initial population, a denominator, and a numerator, and that's fine. So if you were to go away from the measure details page and come back and you see the populations tab showing that orange check mark, you can simply expand it to see which one of those populations you have completed, and that'll tell you whether you have done everything that you need to do for this particular measure. One of the drawbacks to breaking the page up the way we did is that you can no longer see everything all in one spot. So again, it used to be one big long screen. To remedy that, we have added the View Human Readable button. Clicking this button will generate the metadata portion of the human readable. So as you can see, this is just the table areas where you have all of that text. So everything that you've written will show here, and you can just double check and make sure that everything shows the way you intended before you move on from this page. As a disclaimer, this is not the actual human readable export. As you can see, it's missing the logic portion, it's missing the terminology section, the data criteria section, all that stuff. So please don't use this as your human readable export. This is simply for you to check to make sure that everything looks the way that you want it to before you move on from the measure details page. The delete measures button is also still here. This has always been on the measure details page. We've just moved it over here to the left-hand side. Deleting a measure will only delete the draft or the version that you currently have open. So it will not delete previous versions of the measure. So if I delete this, I will only delete this particular draft. My other versions will still be in the system. It's important to note that only a measure owner can delete a measure. And when you click on the delete measure, you're asked to confirm that deletion with your current password. Moving on to the CQL workspace, the first thing you will notice is we've added these little question mark icons. And we've done that on every section of the CQL workspace. This is our new in-app help, and clicking on this will give you a description of each of the fields that are editable within this particular page. This again was a user request, just some quick help for people just getting started who may not know what all of these fields mean or what they're supposed to do in them. Moving on to the definitions section, I need to point out the location of the icons around the CQL editor. We have moved the save, the erase, and the delete icons below the editor. The reason that we did this was to give our users who are using assistive technology a better flow. As they're tabbing through the system, it made more sense for them to enter their expression and then save or erase or delete it, rather than having to go backwards to get to the save button. That also gave us room to put in a button for our new expression builder. The expression builder is a new feature. It has been on our radar for a while, and it's a way for folks who are new to the MAT or new to CQL, who look at the blank CQL editor and aren't really sure where to start. For those folks, we have added the expression builder, and it's going to ask people questions and give you drop-down menus, which you can choose and then click buttons, and it will build it for you. So the first question you're asked is, what type of expression would you like to build? And we've included an in-app help icon here to help people get started with which expression they're trying to do. So it explains the expressions that are available from the screen and gives an example of how you would use those type of expressions. For our example today, we're going to do a query. I'm going to choose query and click build. With a query, I have 4 options that I need to go through: the source, the filter, the sort, and the review query. First thing I need to do is choose my data source for my query. So again, it's asking me what type of expression would I like to use as my data source. For this query, I want to talk about a group of encounters. So I am going to choose data element or retrieve and build. Then I select my data type, encounter performed, and we will go with office visit for our value set and click apply. You can see that the data element or retrieve I just built is now collapsed at the top of the screen, and it asks me if I need to add additional things to this expression. I have a lot of value sets in here that talk about encounters, and I want to add them all together so I can talk about them all at once. So yes, I do need to add more. I'm going to select an operator. In this case, I want to union them together. And again, data element or retrieve, build, data type, And this time we'll go with face-to-face interaction. So now you can see I have the two data element or retrieves that I built here, union together with this operator. I'm going to add one more just so that you can see once I have chosen union as my operator, that is the only option I have available after that point. So union, data element or retrieve, choose my data type, and we'll go with preventative care. Okay, so now I have my three data elements union together, and I need to give my source a name or an alias. I'm going to go with ENC. Continue to filter. Filter in the query is your where expression. So I've got this data of all of my encounters, and how do I want to narrow that down? I want to talk about the time period of these encounters being before the measurement period. So I am going to just go with a timing because that is talking about when these things occurred. Build. So this tells me that to build a timing, I need two phrases or two expressions with a timing phrase in between them. So the expression I want on the left-hand side is an attribute because I want to talk about the relevant period or the time frame in which they happen. So I want to pick attribute, build. I want to talk about the attribute for my query source. So I'm going to choose that alias, and then I want to talk about relevant period. I have an option to clarify my attribute more if I need to. I don't need to in this case. I'm going to click apply. Whoops, I forgot to click the build button. There we go. And apply. You can see that the attribute I built is now here as my left-hand expression. Now I need to build the timing phrase that goes in between them. The timing phrase screen is built based on the flow laid out in the CQL grammar file. So when I choose the beginning of my timing phrase, if I want to do starts, I then get a box that gives me all of the options that are available after starts. I want starts before, and then I can continue more if I would like to, or I could stop here. We're going to do starts before start of. And you can see it's building it in the CQL expression area as I go. I'm going to apply that. So I've now got my left-hand side, my timing phrase. Again, you can expand these to look at them if you need to. And then I want to talk about that it starts before the start of the measurement period, which is a parameter. That just gives me a selection box where I can choose the parameter that I want and apply. And this gives me one more look at my timing that I've built before I move on. So I'm going to draw your attention to the top here. The expression builder is a lot of clicks and it's a lot of screens. And sometimes you can kind of lose your place within the expression builder. So we've included these breadcrumbs at the top, which show you how you got to the current screen. So I was at the initial screen of the builder, I chose query, I'm working on my filter, and I'm in a timing. So I know that if I click the cancel button here, it's going to cancel my timing and take me back to filter. If I click apply, it's going to apply my timing and take me back to filter. I'm going to apply. I'm now back on the filter screen, and my timing is collapsed at the top. And then again, I have the ability to add more if I would like to. For the sake of time, we're not going to do that, and I'm going to continue on to sort. Sorting your query is optional, but I'll do one just for demonstration's sake. So I want to sort this by the start of the relevant period. So I'm going to choose start of from my expression choice, click build. You can see I'm on the start of, end of screen. My boundary is start of, and I want to find the start of an attribute. I'm going to click build, select my attribute, which is relevant period. I can clarify it again, high or low if I need to, and click apply. So now I could change this to end of if I needed to. Start of, we're going to review. I know if I click apply here, I'm going back to sort. If I hit cancel here, I'm canceling this and going back to sort. I'm going to hit apply. And that is now here, and I am sorting in ascending order. You can change that to descending, and it'll change it down here in your CQL expression. The review query screen is your final look at the query that you've built. And this is the only screen within the query flow that has an apply button. So the apply button will apply this entire query and take you back to the screen that you were on prior to choosing query. The exit query will cancel this entire query. Just wipe it all out. You can start over. It'll take you back to the screen you were on before you chose query. We're going to click apply. You can see that I'm back here. I've got my query built, and I can add additional onto this expression as well. I'm back at the initial screen, and on this screen we have two buttons. Exit Builder will cancel everything that you have done here and take you back to the definition section of the CQL workspace. Complete Build will put the expression that you've built into your CQL editor in your definition section. It's important to note that at this point, this expression has not been validated and it has not been formatted. So we have not run it through the translator yet. That happens upon save. So I'm going to give my definition a name and save. And you can see that my definition was saved successfully, and query 4 is showing on the left-hand side. If this expression were to have errors within it, it would act just like any other CQL expression. So you would get the notation on the line number with the red square with the X in it, and you would get a message that said that your definition was saved with errors. And then you can make any changes right here in the CQL editor. Okay, and that covers the changes for the CQL workspace. Let's move on to the measure packager. We've had a couple of changes here. One of the biggest changes we made was how we are handling associations in measure groupings. It used to be almost hidden as to where you needed to add those associations, and a lot of people didn't know they needed associations until they hit the Save Grouping button and got an error message. So what we've done is that the minute you put enough populations into a package grouping that's going to require an association, so in this case I'm in a ratio measure and I've got two initial populations. If I put them all into the same grouping, then I need to supply an association for my denominator and my numerator to state which initial population they are being calculated off of. So for my denominator, if I choose initial population 1, the numerator is automatically set to initial population 2. If I were to change the numerator to initial population 1, then denominator 1 defaults to initial population 2. So that automatically appears on the right-hand side now so that you don't have to go hunting for where you add those associations. And you can save your grouping. And the last upgrade that we've made to the measure packager screen is we've added a package and upload to Bonnie button right on the measure packager screen. This again is a user enhancement request and one that we had on the radar that we've got into the MAP version 5.7. And what this allows you to do is to package your measure and send that measure package directly over to Bonnie without having to go back to the measure library tab, going to the export screen, and then uploading to Bonnie from there. So you can do it right here while you're in the measure. You do need to be signed into both UMLS and Bonnie at the time that you do that. I'm not going to do it because I don't actually have any measures in Bonnie, so I won't get anything back other than a blank spreadsheet. You just click this button, it packages it up, it sends it over there, and then it sends you back the same Excel spreadsheet that you get when you do this from the Measure Library tab. Just a couple more changes we need to talk about, and that's on the exports. I'm going to open this package here. And all of the changes are to the human readable document. So the first change that we've made is we have changed component measures to component measures list. And this change was done to match what is in the CMS blueprint. So it's just a title change of this field. And that field only appears if you're in a composite measure. The other changes have to do with sorting of the terminology and the data criteria section. The terminology section is now sorted alphanumerically regardless of case. We had a few instances where the case of the value set name was affecting the sort order. So we've corrected that. It's now going to sort alphanumerically regardless of the case. The data criteria section is now sorted alphabetically by the data type and then by the name of the code or value set. We were always sorting alphanumerically by the data type. It's that second layer that we've added just to make that sort a little clearer. And that is all of the user interface changes for the MAT version 5.7. So let's go back to our PowerPoint and take a look at our release schedule. So next Tuesday in the evening, we are going to deploy MAT version 5.7 into our production environment. And then Wednesday, May 22nd, we will post the release notes and the updated user guide for MAT version 5.7 to the training and resources page of the MAT public website. And that website is emeasuretool.cms.gov. I am going to pass the presentation over to James Bradley here from the Bonnie team so he can give you an update on their upcoming release.
Hi everyone, my name is James Bradley. I'm the technical lead of Bonnie, and we're going to discuss updates to Bonnie and specifically the release coming up for version 3.2. So the agenda, as I just previously stated, we're going to discuss the updates to Bonnie, the future of QDM logic-based Bonnie, a Bonnie announcement, and then some Bonnie resources, and then we'll have some time for questions. Quick overview of Bonnie in case you're not familiar. Bonnie is an electronic clinical quality measure testing tool. It allows users to load ECQMs that are created and packaged using the measure authoring tool. Once those packages are loaded into Bonnie, users can then create synthetic patients using data elements that are defined within the measure definition. As the user is building out these patients, they're exploring the behavior and complexity characteristics of ECQMs, and over time can continue using the same patients for updated ECQMs. Now, for the Bonnie version 3.2 update, the following features are included. First, we are providing new support for the following CQL operators: same as, matches, split bond matches, to ratio, and all of the converts to operators. And converts to star here is just referencing all the different types. So converts to string, converts to ratio, converts to date. In addition, we are also adding support for the updated CQL to ELM translator version 1.3.14. And then we also have bug fixes. So we will have a fix for Bonnie 536, which is an author date time issue within the Bonnie. And there's a special note about this, and we'll discuss it in the following slides. This will require our users to update their test cases if they're using author date time along with author date time in QDM data elements that could also use prevalence period or relevance period. In addition to that, we have Bonnie 546, which is a very minor issue with the value set name, and then the fix for Bonnie 564. And this is going to be seen in the Excel export. If a CQL expression is returning too much data and that is being inputted into an Excel export, typically you would have seen an Excel error pop up. We are now truncating the data in cells that exceed the limit in Excel. Alright, so this is about the author date time fix. Currently on Bonnie production, you will see that you could reference .author date time. So on the right hand side, prior TPA.author date time is evaluating to true and highlighted as green. However, the data element that is representing prior GPA in this case doesn't have an author date time, as you can see on the left-hand side. What Bonnie had been doing is for QDM types that had prevalence period and author date time, or relevance period and author date time, would automatically use the onset time as the author date time. This is incorrect, and we've fixed this in our upcoming release. And so you will then see this situation. So in Bonnie 3.2, on the left-hand side is the before, the same data element and same logic, but this time you'll see the author date time is evaluating default and highlighting red. And on the right-hand side is the solution. So in order for us to allow users to represent author date time and prevalence period without those dates and times being exactly the same, we have to add a field value attribute. So it's another drop down. And you can see that in the red highlighting on the right hand image. Once you add an author date time to the data element, you'll see the right hand side in the logic, it is evaluating to true and highlighting as green once again. So the users will need to do this if they were referencing author date time for data types that had prevalence period or relevance period as well as author date time. If there are any questions about this, we can discuss it a little bit more at the end of the slide deck. Next, future of QDM logic-based bonding. You may have seen this slide before from other presentations. We are now in the transition period where we have 3 instances of Bonnie open to the public. One's running Bonnie version 3.0. Right now it's 3.1, soon will be 3.2. Bonnie prior, which is running last year's annual update version of Bonnie. And then we have Bonnie QDM, which is running the QDM-based ECQM still. At the beginning of June, so June 1st, we are retiring Bonnie QDM.healthit.gov for good, and we will be moving forward with just 2 servers, Bonnie Production and then Bonnie Prior. And each annual update release of Bonnie, we will be moving the server that was currently on production to Prior, and Prior will just be retired. So in upcoming August for Bonnie 4.0, Bonnie 3.2 will be moved to Bonnie Prior, and Bonnie version 2.3 will be retired. We will be continuing to perform test case transfers for Bonnie QDM through September, so please just continue adding those transfer requests to our JIRA tickets. So Bonnie announcements now. We have an upcoming quarterly Bonnie Town Hall. It's going to be held Wednesday, May 22nd, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. If you would like to read a little bit more about what a Bonnie Town Hall is or sign up and find the link to the webinar, you can go to the ECQI Resource Center. It's on their calendar. And in addition to having some preset topics, we also ask that our users bring in their own topics or questions. And if you would like to schedule something and put it on our agenda, please contact the Bonnie feedback list at miter.org. For this upcoming Bonnie Town Hall, we'll be discussing features that will be included in Bonnie 4.0, specifically measure period updates for measures in Bonnie. All right, and then finally, Bonnie resources. The main Bonnie site, bonnie.healthit.gov. The JIRA for tracking issues can be found at the link below. If you'd like to contact the development team with questions, concerns, agenda topics for the Bonnie Town Hall, you can use the Bonnie-feedback-list at miter.org. And finally, all of our code and work is online and open source on GitHub, so if you're interested or curious about the work we do, you can follow the link below. And before I move on to questions, I just want to reiterate that the Bonnie version 3.2 release will be occurring on Tuesday mid-afternoon. We'll be sending an email out to our users Monday to schedule the exact timing on Tuesday, and we will send out another announcement once Bonnie 3.2 has been released.
Thank you everybody for attending, and we hope you enjoy the new versions of the Bonnie and the Mat tool.